As usual, we will close off the episode with a short how-to section in which one of our guests, Sinan, from the organization Climaximo, with whom we talked with about their book All In, a revolutionary theory to stop climate collapse. Sinan will tell us about an example of how Climaximo tried to organize in the face of a crisis with this movement ecology mindset or framing. So I'll pass it on to Sinan.
The example that I can give how to do this kind of work happened actually very recently in a meeting of Climaximo, well, in a series of meetings in Climaximo, which was when the US aggressions became really, let's say, volatile. There was the capturing, the kidnapping of Maduro, and then attacks in Iran. And in the meantime, like Lebanon being bombed by Israel and so on. Like there was a lot of uncertainty and a lot of things happened at the same time. And here in Portugal, we didn't really have a good response to it. The social movements didn't have a good response to it. That was also the time that Europe was discussing Greenland being invaded or taken over or whatever. Like that is the status. And our analysis at that point, like intuition, let's say, was people are ready. Masses of people are really, really discontent with this kind of bullying coming from the US. Even like center wing sections of the society, even middle class, petit bourgeois sections of society are really frustrated with this kind of bullying. We have a good moment to mobilize like tens of thousands of people to the street. That is the task. And we also said, if our group, which is a climate justice group, like Action Group in Lisbon, if we call for it, would that work? And the answer is no, because we have a topic, not because we think we have a topic, but because the society thinks we have a topic, which is climate, right? Like fossil fuels and so on, which does work for Iran and Venezuela, but doesn't work for Greenland necessarily. At least that's not how it was framed, or for Cuba and so on. So we were like, okay, we are not the right people. Who could be the right people? And then we had like a brainstorming of like, if this is the group and that is the group, but then that belongs to another bubble and that produces another bubble, like others will be allergic to that kind of public call for action. Then we made some phone call saying, this is our intuition. Do you agree with this? How do you think we could approach? Because we are also very frustrated because we are part of the social movement and we are frustrated that nobody's doing anything about it, to the extent that we are almost like on the fence, like borderline making a call, but we don't want to make the call because it will spoil the momentum. And then we checked with a lot of people. All of this happened in less than 24 hours. So we were just like, this needs to happen, because that was the time when Trump said, like tweeted, but he never says anything anymore. Tweeted that he would destroy the civilization of Iran or whatever. That was the moment that, like, if that ever happens, like if there is a qualitative escalation, then there has to be an emergency mobilization. And then we checked with different groups, different organizations coming from housing, social movements, some of the political parties as well. Like we just created some space of dialogue, let's say, or multilogue or whatever you want to call it, where we're like, okay, let's explore together. What is it? And then immediately, like in the same 24 hours, there was an emergency call where we agreed, okay, so we're going to call for vigils in these environments, and then we will set up the rest of the process, and who else should we check, and so on. So this is the kind of dynamic that came from a frustration inside Climaximo, which was shared by others, but somehow like we were unarticulated or uncoordinated in our frustration. So we created the space of like, let's talk. And then we found a way of like, okay, so in this way, maybe we can get the result that we want, which is tap into the frustration and discontentment in the population at large and find the right way of mobilizing those people to the streets in a way that is radical, in a way that is inclusive of different priorities and sensibilities that people might bring to the street at that time. That is the kind of thing that we did, being very aware of our positioning. What is the strength that we have? And what are the strengths necessary to do what we think should happen? And then look for those strengths elsewhere and see if we can combine them, if we can articulate them in a way that is beneficial for the movement as large. Because if we don't do any of these things, from my perspective, like where the Climaximo group is specifically standing, Venezuela and then now Iran and so on, these are also locking us into a fossil fuel future. So I don't want this to happen. Like even if I was really limited to my silo of like fossil fuels, even in that very limited vision, I needed these mobilizations to happen, right? And of course, we don't see it this way. We see like climate justice movement as part of the anti-capitalist movement. So we really think like these things growing are beneficial in general in the medium term and in the long term. So this is the approach that we picked. Then we checked with our allies, our comrades, or sometimes like just partners, let's say, other groups in the movement, and we reflected back to us. And then, so this is the kind of reaction that we consider interesting when we have a movement level approach rather than like your organizational perspective, which by definition is limited.
I'm thinking whether there was some moment in that process that you could identify, like seeing that group would be better to make the call because they are, I don't know, grounded in some way or represent some segment of society or... Yeah, I'm thinking even more concretely than you described how we can see the process unfolding.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know how to give it more concrete because it wasn't a sequence of actions. It was a sequence of conversations that happened offline and online. The curious part about this experience, and I mean, this is just one example of a thing that we did regularly, but this happened just a couple of months ago. This is why it's very live in my head. The curious thing about this experience is avoid the temptation that us, my group, should say something about it or do something about it, right? Just because it's bad and we are worried, just go back and check, does this opportunity or threat, does this external factor combine well with the strengths of my organization specifically? And then if not, what else am I supposed to do? For instance, if it is really just about like a new fossil fuel project anywhere, then I know that Climaximo is the best situated organization, or at least one of the best situated organizations to talk about it. But when it is something else, some other topic, at least it's framed differently in the public space, independent of how I read it, then I'm like, okay, then I have to find a way of being part of a larger intervention that is not limited to my particular group. Resisting that temptation of like, oh, we have to do something, and more like something has to be made, and then check what are we supposed to do in relation to that thing that needs to be made, rather than if something needs to be made, we just have to do it. I think that is the interesting dynamic here that is sometimes hard to sustain in a way that is like emotionally difficult because it gives you a lot of frustration if something needs to be done and seems like nobody's doing it. It's a bit frustrating also to just like recognize that even if you did it, it would be just yet another small group doing something about it.
If you appreciate our videos, please like and subscribe to help us get the word out.